My great-uncle was John Jellioce Blair from St. Elizabeth in Jamaica. He joined the Royal Air Force in 1941 and became a navigator in Halifax bombers flying from Pocklington in Yorkshire. He was one of almost 500 Black Caribbean aircrew who joined at that time. Prior to 1940, the British forces had in place something called the colour bar, which stipulated that only British men of European descent could be officers in Her Majesty's Armed Forces. However, after the calamity of 1940 and the losses suffered by the RAF in the Battle of Britain, they lifted the colour bar and started recruiting men from the Caribbean and also from West Africa. One key way in which the RAF differed from, for example, the Americans, was that they had fully integrated aircrew in their aircraft. So you'd find in a single aeroplane a pilot from the north of England, a navigator from the Caribbean, a tail gunner from India, a Welshman as radio operator. There was racism within the RAF at that time, but it was jumped on. There's one incident where a squadron commander told people to return to the bar after they'd turned their backs on the black aircrew and said, "I'll have none of that nonsense here." And my uncle certainly had a good experience, a positive experience throughout his service, and he stayed in the RAF until 1965. The missions were extremely dangerous. They didn't just face the enemy, the anti-aircraft fire and the night fighters, which could account for dozens of aircraft on a single night, but they also faced the elements. In those days, aircraft could go down for all sorts of reasons. Ice on the wings, flying into fog, flying into cloud. At night, with no lights, there'd be 1,000 aircraft streaming together towards the target. So mid-air collisions were common as well. The casualties are extremely high. My uncle flew 33 operational missions over Europe during the war. And each time he climbed into that aircraft, he knew that if they went down, whereas his white crewmates would most likely be taken to a prisoner of war camp, he would be shot on the spot. A black man landing in those circumstances had almost no chance of survival. My uncle had no time for fear during missions. The navigator is a critical component of the crew. They had to do all those calculations by hand with maps and rulers and protractors and compasses, while in the air with anti-aircraft fire going on around them, night fighters buzzing around, aircraft going down, and they had to focus on that task under extreme threat and think about nothing else, otherwise they wouldn't get to the target and they certainly wouldn't get home. He'd said, "One thing we were very clear about as Caribbean aircrew was that if Britain lost the war, we would return to slavery. While we didn't like the British Empire, particularly, we certainly did not want the Nazi Party coming down and running Jamaica for us." My great-uncle was a hero. The story of John Blair and others like him is really important because what it says is that we can integrate. That even in 1941, we were able to overcome far more entrenched barriers than we face today, and everyone was able to take part and everybody was able to be part of a team when facing crisis. And that's a lesson for the youth today. The barriers are there, but they can be overcome, and people can adapt and society can change.